da pawb a croeso I cyfarfod cynllunio. Good morning and welcome to the planning meeting to be held on the 10th of November at 9:30 AM 2021. I need to go through a few things to start off with. We will go through the voting system as we have done virtually, calling out people's names, so that doesn't need to be checked right now. And we've obviously been through the translation system. So if we just start going through the agenda, and I'll bring in the legal officer in just a moment to go through their little bit. But the first one is just apologies. We go on to that. So I've had apologies from Councillor Melvin Meyer, Councillor Alan Hughes, and I've also had an email from Councillor Tony Thomas about timings. So we've got all that info. Does anyone else have any apologies? Councillor Christine Marston?
Councillor Ann Davis.
Diolch yn fawr, thank you.
Sorry, I'm here.
Oh, Councillor Ann Davis is here. So no. If anyone else,
I'd like to give Councillor Bob Murray's apologies. He will be a little late, Chair, but he will be joining the meeting hopefully before 10 o'clock.
Okay.
There we are. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, so we'll just make a note of that as to which item he comes in on for voting purposes. Okay, so if we move on to agenda item 2, which is declarations of interest, members to declare any personal or prejudicial interest in any business, and I'll just bring in the legal officer to just
Thank you, Chair. FFORDD, good morning, members. Members will be aware of the requirements under the Council's Code of Conduct to declare any personal or prejudicial interests in respect of any business to be considered at today's meeting. Such interest should be declared now, or as soon as the councillor affected becomes aware that they have a personal or indeed a prejudicial interest in today's business. All members declaring an interest are required to state clearly what the interest is and to advise whether it is a personal interest or a personal and prejudicial interest as defined in the Code of Conduct. Any member declaring a prejudicial interest is required to leave the meeting for the duration of the business and can take no part in the proceedings. Members with a personal interest only may take part in the debate and any vote. If a personal and prejudicial interest is declared today that has not previously been disclosed and recorded, the councillor concerned will be required to complete and sign a declaration of interest form, which is available from the committee support staff. Thank you. Diolch.
Okay, diolch yn fawr. Okay, if anyone wants to unmute and declare a personal prejudicial interest, and give you a few seconds for that.
Yeah, Mervyn Parry.
Hi, Mervyn.
I'd like to declare a personal interest in item number 6. The applicant of this one is a customer for the company that I work for.
Okay,
so personal interest.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, as always, if during the meeting you realise that you do have a personal prejudicial interest, just make us aware at your earliest convenience. Okay, agenda item number 3, urgent matters as agreed by the chair. I don't have any. Agenda item number 4 is the minutes, to confirm the accuracy of the minutes of the planning committee meeting held on the 6th of October. So that's from pages 9 on the in the report. So if we just go through those again, if you just unmute and speak is the easiest thing as we go through, and I'll go through reasonably slowly through the minutes. Okay, so we've got page 9, which was the declarations of interest. Then on page 10 and page 11, we had application number 5, which was the St Asaph Business Park one. That was on pages 10, 11, and moving on to 12. Then on page 12, we had application number 6. Page 13, we had application 7. And then we also had the Owlamore Offshore Wind Farm formal response, which was moved on to page 14 and 15 as well. And then we had our annual monitoring report on page 15 and 16. Okay. So could we have somebody propose that they are a true and accurate record of the meeting? Councillor Christine Marston proposed. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Joan Busfield, thank you very much. There was a few hands up there. So as with the minutes, what we can do, if nobody, we'll just give you an opportunity now. If there's no disdaining voices, then we can record those as an accurate record. So we'll just give you a couple of seconds to unmute and speak if there's anything you need to say. Okay, so that's the minutes confirmed. So just as always, we have the blue sheets that came in yesterday. So you should have had an email from Judith Williams last night with the running order of the day. As you can see, the running order of the day is slightly different from the agenda because we have public speakers and they obviously always come first, just for those of us that don't know that or whatever. So we have agenda item 6 is the first one, and that is on page 63 of our reports. Okay, there is there's no late information on this one. So if I just go through this one, so it's page 63. The ward is Llanbedr Clwyd Llangenhafal. The ward member is Hugh O. Williams. The application number is 22/2020/0735/PF. The proposal is the erection of a rural enterprise dwelling, installation of a private treatment plant and associated works. The location is the land adjacent to HENDRERWYDD Farm, HENDRERWYDD Denby, LL164LL. And the officer recommendation is to refuse, and this has been brought to committee by the local member. So we do have a public speaker on this, which is a Mr. Ian Jones, who is the applicant. No speaker against, just a speaker for. So when you are ready, Mr. Jones, you will have 3 minutes. As soon as you start speaking, I will start timing your 3 minutes to address the committee.
Thank you very much for taking the time to consider my planning request today. It is much appreciated. I'm a dairy farmer and lived at HENDRERWYDD all my life. So did my parents and my grandparents before me. The business has progressed from the first started in 2006. To reach standard, sorry, to reach and evolve this high standard of retailers, I must, sorry, I've lost my line. Sorry, I apologize for this.
Do you want to start again?
Please, if I could, possibly. Yes, thank you.
I'll start your time again whenever you're ready. Start again.
Thank you very much. Thank you again for taking the time to consider today and to take my proposal. I'm a dairy farmer, lived in and worked in HENDREWYDD Farm all my life. My parents and my grandparents before me. The business has progressed from the first started in 2006. To reach the standards involved high levels of criteria. The business when I first started actually gaining organic status in 2006. To reach this standard involves high levels of criteria set by retailers on the organic food industry to ensure our consumers that our milk is the highest quality and our cows have a wonderful life. Our dairy farm these days are all reducing in numbers that they do not meet the criteria which the producers are requiring them to do so. So we offer high standards of food industry and sustainability and to keep the carbon footprint low as possible. So our supermarkets are out, which we're asked by our supermarkets. Dairy farms are closing annually and they can't meet production criteria which is required. This is why they are closing. As part of its action strategy, expected and provide our site for quality family accommodation. This is why planning request has been submitted. There needs to be a 24 hours, 7 days a week representation on this farm to assist with the calvings and all birds stay alive and the mother and the calf perform and wonderfully live a special life. The additional, the holiday let mentioned is actually a 2-bedroom and not a 3-bedroom cottage. This is why I'm speaking today, because the caliber of staff which I'm requiring is managerial role. You can't expect a managerial person to live in a 2-bedroom cottage. So this is why it is poor. The cottage is not inadequate for any reasons. So I wish to say thank you very much, and I think my time is up by now. So thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do officers want to come in at any point? No. Okay. I can see the local member is there. Councillor Hugh Williams, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks for the opportunity to bring this to Planning Committee. HENDRERWYDD Farm is a successful business. You can see through the business plan. They've ticked nearly 95% of all the criteria to gain planning for this dwelling. I go to Gatliver School, which is only a stone throw away from this farm. We're struggling to get children into that school. This is an opportunity where we can get more people living in quality rural accommodation. I think it's very important for the unit that this dwelling goes forward. I've spent a lot of time with Mr. Jones looking at all options. We've looked at siting the new dwelling in different places due to a gas pipe nearby. The land adjacent is not in the ownership of Mr. Jones. And that's the reason why I brought it here today. I feel it does fit well in with the whole project. The cottage, he says, is a 2-bedroom cottage. As Mr. Jones has said, he wants to encourage a managerial job, which will hopefully involve a family. And you know, our rural areas are struggling. This is a great organic farm. You know, we're hearing carbon footprints every day. Well, here's a good opportunity of a jewel in the crown for Denbighshire, an organic farm which is doing all the tick list. I please urge you members to support this application. And if I need to come back, maybe Chair, I can come back later. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Just on that, just reminds me actually about coming back on things. Obviously, as local member, there might be something you could give us some knowledge. But yeah, just to remind members that when we're speaking at Planning Committee, we should make sure we only speak once. And unless it's a point of order or something like that, we shouldn't be coming back and asking lots of other questions. Okay, that's just to keep the flow of it. It's not to stifle debate. It's actually to improve it, to make sure we're just all getting across our points. Okay, that's always been the same. That's no different from any other time. Okay, as always, if you just put your hands up, I can see them on my iPad. So obviously I can see a few up at the moment. So Councillor Mervyn Parry first.
Thank you, Chair. For making it easier, I'll switch my camera off just so hopefully you can hear me better. Thank you, Chair and members. HENDRERWYDD Farm is a very progressive working organic farm in the Vale of Clwyd. Ian Jones, the applicant and the farmer, decided to go down the organic route in 2006 on his 485-acre farm, supplying a much growing demand for local wholesome organic milk. The whole approach has changed on this farm following this decision, from soil management and livestock welfare to using multi-species organic grass mixtures with nitrogen-fixing clovers, vetches, herbs, which has had a huge impact on the farm cell structure and carbon sequestration. This is a very important criteria that his milk retailers demand from Ian Jones. Ian Jones milks 270 cows, an additional 230 replacement heifers, 60 of which will be in calf for this coming season. Ian has predominantly been managing and running the farm himself with full-time and casual labour at busy times of the season. The recent COVID-19 pandemic has put an extra strain on him and on the staffing the enterprise, as the business needs to have staff available 24/7 with the all year round calving system. Is quite a mental strain. The tests required for the planning have proved that the business justifies the need for a dwelling from the additional farm worker and the staff need to live on the farm in 5.1 and 5.2 of your documents. The financial accounts demonstrate and support the erection of a new dwelling in 5.3. In 5.4, Reading Agricultural Consultants and the officers' concerns regarding the location of the new dwelling has been considered, and proposed suggestions by officers not be delivered, as there is an underground mains gas supply on one of the sites and the second is not in Ian Jones's ownership. The proposed location is sited within visibility of the calving shed and away from the flood zone between the farmhouse and this location. There is a photo showing the location of this, and if you look at the gap in between, it's actually where the stream goes through, so it's in the flood zone. and also the house doesn't impact on anyone else. Officers commented regarding the size of the new house, which I personally don't think is excessive. A 3-bedroom house with service room and a farm office. They suggested the possible use of the 2/3-bedroom farm cottage, which I hope I can clear for you now, members. The farmhouse, which is the new farmhouse, is a barn type in its appearance for Ian Jones and would blend in well in the location. The existing farmhouse is the one that the herd manager and family will live in. The type of person Ian wants to help him take the business forward will need to be a position that's advertised nationally to attract the quality of person who can step up to the challenge of this important role. Better still if this applicant was local, but it still have to be a requirement to live in the farmhouse. Attracting the right person needs to be a package that also pleases the wife and family, and a quality sizable family house is a necessity to draw in the right applicant. The 2-bedroom cottage, 3 in the report, is actually a 2-bedroom cottage, attached to the main farmhouse, is not a size that would attract the modern family to the employment. There was an application to make this cottage larger, but it didn't happen. They put an upstairs extension onto the existing flat roof kitchen to add 1 more bedroom. The intention with this is to let it out as a holiday let with the option of using it for extra season or relief workforce if needed. There is also no other suitable properties available in the locality. Given consideration to my comments, I believe that this application does pass the criteria for TAN 6, and I would like you to support, and I'd like to support the application for the new farmhouse at HENDRERWYDD Farm, so that Ian Jones can continue with his fantastic enterprise of organic farming with the help he requires from the right candidate and family to live in the main farmhouse, giving everyone involved a good work-life balance, which I hope you agree is so important today. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, so that's a proposal to grant. Do you have a seconder for that, Councillor?
Yeah, please. You're happy to second, Chair. Thank you.
Do you want to come in at that point as well?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, I'll leave my camera on then. If it goes, let me know and I'll turn it on. So we just heard this farm's over 70 years. It's been operating. It's organic farm, so 70 years. So in any other business, it'd be getting a blue badge. So I hope, if possible, we can support this. But I do have a few questions what need clarifying off officers. So when you say farm workers can go a mile away to another house in the report, I thought about this, and if officer can confirm, so I drove recently from RHIF to Denby and I passed 10 farms, all with workers' dwellings and other extra dwellings on site. So is this the norm? Because I've certainly not heard it. So if they can confirm, I don't think that's a viable option, but it's been mentioned in the report by officers. And also in the report, it talks about the welfare of animals. So we'd all agree with the welfare aspect of the animals, and we're dealing with a lot of animals. And as it says, 24/7 care is needed. So this is delivered better if someone's on site, living on site. Living on site, they can walk there, you see a cow, they can walk out and deal with the problem. They don't have to drive or get a message from someone that's on site. So from a welfare point of view, without doubt, they're better on site. But if officers can confirm why they think living away from site, which is also going to add thousands of miles of driving when we're meant to be greener, that's been mentioned. So for me, I don't understand why you'd want someone to live off site. And so, but if officers can confirm, if they can roll off applications where this had been requested before, I can't remember. So if you can clarify that, and I'd like to come back at the end, please.
Okay, I'll bring in Paul. Do you want to come in now? Paul Griffin.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think I'd just like to focus members' thoughts at this point. The issue about welfare of the animals, I don't think anyone in the planning team is disputing that. I think the report itself covers the issue that there is a need for an additional worker on site. The real issue here is whether or not there's an alternative means. Before we get to the point of building a new dwelling in the open countryside, have we explored all other options? Now, clearly, there is this holiday let structure annexed to the existing farmhouse. there's an argument put forward that it's not suitable for the type of person that would want to work there. But just looking at the figures, the actual approved plans for that holiday let give it a sort of the size of 100 square meters. So that building is equivalent to what we would say is acceptable for a 4-bed dwelling. It's really hard to argue that that's going to be substandard for somebody to live and work from. There is an option already on site, even if the actual arrangement of the farmhouse and the annex isn't quite appropriate. We should be exploring that, and we should be rearranging that setup, even considering an extension to the existing annex before we get to the point of saying, right, there are no other options here other than to build a new house in the open countryside. It's very difficult, I think, for members to argue that they've explored all other suitable options. If they were to support a house in the open countryside, given the arrangement existing on site right now, that there isn't other suitable accommodation available. There is. With regard to Councillor Young's comments on the 1 mile from the site, that was actually just, you throw the net. They're looking at within a mile of the site. They're suggesting that there are potential, our consultants are suggesting there are potential within 1 mile. Now, clearly, if members take the view that they should be nearer to the site than that, well, that's totally within their remit to take that view. But we would then say, but there's an annex there that either is already existing suitable for a 4-bed dwelling, or could easily be turned into that for a lot less cost and a lot less problematic than a new dwelling in the open countryside, and it would comply with policy. So I just want to focus members that the real fundamental issue here is the other suitable accommodation. Officer's opinion is that there is other suitable accommodation available. Thank you.
Can I just come back on that one, Chair? When I can?
Yeah, well, I'm just going to bring in, go on then, Mervyn, come in if it's brief. Yeah, come in now.
And now I want to come back to it.
It's just on that cottage, Chair. It is an old end of stone cottage that isn't an efficient building, and to bring that up to modern day standards with where it is, to put the type of applicant in wouldn't come up to the standard. Paul mentions cost there. He can't put any costs behind that. We can put the cost on the new build. It's just, in my view, completely not suitable for the type of applicant we want. And because of the size of the dwelling, the option is also kept open on that one for using it as holiday let in times, but when seasonal staff are required, which they...
Okay, we just lost the last sentence. We've obviously got the gist of it there. Turn your camera up. I'll bring in
isolate from each other. It was a big need to use that cottage on farm this year, and one of the staff is actually still in there at the moment, Chair. So it's a necessity on the farm to maybe have that temporary accommodation also.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor.
All right, Chair, just quickly, I just make the point, in this area there's half a dozen farms with workers' dwellings on site, not a mile away, not half a mile, on site. So this isn't a norm. I don't think we should be asking people to change of use. So we don't know in the future if the business will need the income off the holiday let. So I don't think we should be pushing businesses to reapply and change of use. And as I say, other farms in the area have got plenty of dwellings on there. And from a welfare point of view, and the welfare of the staff, they're better on site, and that's why I'd be supporting it. It's better for welfare for the animals, the workers, and it's greener to be on site. Thank you, Chair. Jock about.
Thanks. I don't think officers are arguing that it has to be off site. I mean, the officer's point, I think, is quite clear, is that they believe there is a house that is adequate. Obviously, Mervyn's point and other people's points so far, that the house isn't adequate. So I think that's where the sort of debate is around at the moment, isn't it? I'll bring in Paul Mead anyway.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think Paul's right in terms of trying to focus members' minds here in relation to the issues. I don't think officers are arguing about the need here, and I don't think we're arguing that there is a sort of financially viable agricultural business here. One thing you probably do have to do in this debate is actually put to one side the issue of the holiday let planning permission that was granted in 2005, because that's sort of a completely separate issue to this application, albeit what I've just heard there is that it's not being used as a holiday let, and that an agricultural worker probably has been living in there in breach of that planning permission. So that's one thing I just want to raise. The other thing I want to raise is that I think I'd heard Councillor Mervyn
Yeah,
Perry.
just point of order on that one. It was only used because of the COVID pandemic and they had to separate the staff
That's
on
in
the
the
farm.
report.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's in the report.
Okay, the other point that I wanted to raise was the mention there that the new potential agricultural worker wouldn't be living in the new dwelling, that they'd be living in the existing farmhouse. I think I heard that as well. I think that the issue that you've got to debate here, members, is that you've got clear government guidance and clear policy around meeting tests for building a new dwelling in the open countryside. And the clear issue that you have to go through is, are there existing suitable accommodation on the site before you actually build a brand new property in the open countryside? You have to look at whether there's an existing dwelling available. And from what I'm hearing here, in terms of the initial debate and the information that's been supplied by the applicant and the members, there clearly is. There's clearly accommodation there that should be used prior to building a brand new house. So I think the issue around how you're going to debate this and how you're going to come to a conclusion on whether you can build a new dwelling in the open countryside, you've got to ask yourself the question, what reasons are you going to give us why the existing property cannot be used in the way that has already been described by members?
Okay, point of order, Chair. Can I just come in on that, please?
Yeah.
So I did ask the question and it wasn't answered. So you're saying there's no farms in the area with holiday lets and workers' dwellings on there? Because I know these. So this has already been done. So I hear what you're saying, but this isn't new. And we've, even in our term, we've approved them. Thank you, Chair.
I think officers can come in on the fact of, well, I think I can come in on the holiday let and the finances of the holiday let are not part of this business proposal. So it's not reliant on the holiday let or anything. So that's where, so we have to be very, very careful about making the holiday let part of the application. There's other speakers. Okay, we've obviously had our say. It's quite clear where this is coming to anyway. The debate. Okay, it's quite clear where obviously the arguments are on either side. But I've got Councillor Brian Jones to speak.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Let me just lower my hand. And yeah, yesterday morning, you might say it's not relevant to this meeting, but I was chairing a COP26 business breakfast, and there was an exciting agenda there. One of the items was actually organic farming, and that was all very interesting. And as some of you might know, there's a lot of exciting things happening on that front, and drawing a focus onto an industry which in former days hasn't been the most sexiest, let's say, but nevertheless it's coming back to the fore, and it is going to be a big driving force in our aspirations towards net carbon zero, etc., etc. So on the basis of that, I couldn't sit here this morning and not support this application, except what the officers are saying about your TAN and your planning policy. Yet again, it throws up that old chestnut that at the moment we're regarded here in Denbighshire right on the forefront of the climate change agenda. We're ahead of the other authorities in Wales. We're pushing the boundaries and we're making big progress, but we're getting dragged back. And this, without sounding like I'm criticising anyone, here's an example again, and I know you've got to work to your policies, but it's not helping us on the climate change front if we don't grant this application for this building. The reason I would come back to you and say is a reason why, because the industry needs an overall lift to attract people to Denbighshire to work in this industry. You've got to give them the facilities, and part of the facility would be top-notch accommodation, etc., etc., etc. And hopefully, if it does go through, it'll have decent broadband and all the rest of it with it. So I suppose what I'm getting to is, as a side issue, we need to look at joining up the dots between the climate change agenda and planning policy, because there's definitely another division here on this application. We had one the other week where we've ended up chopping trees down. There's still a massive fallout from that. I'm getting criticism as the lead member. How can you sit there, lead member, and talk about climate change have your name in the media talking about EV charging, eco taxis, etc., etc. And then on the other side of the coin, we're chopping trees down. I know there's reasons for that, and I know there's technical data that will support that. But to the normal Mr. and Mrs. resident, they don't get us. They're looking at us and thinking that we're that old one. We don't know what we're doing because they're looking at a tale of two halves, and it's giving them a different result. So I believe, or I can ask the question of the officers, can you put a condition on this application that the building is for the use of farm workers going forward, that it is part of the business, that it won't become a holiday let, whether that can be put in as a condition if we're going to grant this application. And I think that will do me for now, Chair, as they say.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to bring in the legal officer, Tim Dillon.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Just to assist members, there's been obviously some debate, some considerable debate on this. Just you all need to be obviously mindful of material planning considerations. There has been some debate about, for example, the existing development not being suitable for the type of staff that they desire, and also reference to, industry needing a lift. Essentially those aren't material planning considerations. So you just need to be very careful. There is a policy here at stake. There is a policy that basically sets out that it doesn't comply with that policy. It fails the test. So consequently, if you want to depart from that, you have to have very good, robust material planning considerations to withstand legal challenge. So you just need to maybe revisit that and look carefully at your reasoning to ensure that it's material planning considerations, because any reference to suitability of individuals, that obviously is not relevant. So you just need to be mindful and careful about that. Thank you.
I'll just bring in Paul Mead. I know Gwyneth, you want to come in, you can come in after Paul, okay?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was just coming back to a couple of questions that I think have been raised by members in that debate. I know Councillor Young had raised that issue around any other examples around the county of this. I mean, I suppose if you look at it in the actual facts here, no, there isn't any other examples that we can give where somebody's had planning permission granted for a holiday let and then asked for planning permission for a new dwelling for an agricultural worker and not argued why they can't use the holiday let. So no, I think in this set of circumstances, I haven't come across it before, and this is why I'm feeling so strongly about it, because I think the policy is quite clear on this issue. You've got to use what you've got on site before you build a brand new dwelling. So coming on to the point that was raised by Councillor Brian Jones on climate change, I think the issue really that you've got to decide there isn't the building of a brand new dwelling and the impact on the environment of building that new dwelling a little bit more harmful for the climate than actually using what you've got on site. And that's the fundamental issue. Officers are saying they've got something that they can use on site, and we need to hear from members what their reasons are for going against that, really, as the legal officer said. Thank you, Chair.
Cynghorydd Gwyneth Cynllunio.
Diolch yn fawr iawn. Dwi jyst isio cadarnhad, does na neb yn erbyn cael adeilad ychwanegol ar gyfer gweithwyr. Y lleoliad sydd yn anghywir yn marn y swyddogion. Gai just cael cadarnhad am hynna?
I think, yeah, the officers, yeah, there is no debate that there is the need for an additional property for an agricultural worker to live. That is not up for debate because everyone is in agreement with that. Officers are arguing there is currently a building, a dwelling there that can be either used as it is or transformed into the dwelling that is required. They are saying that is there on site already present, and therefore a new dwelling is not needed. And what Mervyn, I think, without putting words in his mouth, but I think what Mervyn and Mark, who are the proposer and the seconder, are suggesting is that dwelling is not adequate, and therefore a new dwelling is required in addition. So that's the crux of where we're at with it all.
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor, right, okay. So we've obviously, I can't see any hands up. If the proposer, we've had a proposer, we've had a seconder, we've had obviously other people speaking in favour as well. As the legal officer said, if we're going against the refusal, which is the officer's recommendation, we just need those reasons. So Councillor Mervyn Parry, if you just want to come in, Councillor Hugh Williams, do you want to come in now, and then they'll go. But basically, Mervyn, I'll come back to you just to actually clarify the exact planning reasons to go against officer's recommendation, if that's okay. Obviously, we're quite clear on it, but if we just get it very, very clear, and then we can go to the vote. Councillor Hugh Williams.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the debate, members. I'm really pleased what we're sitting here today, looking at putting a dwelling into this farm, because in my lifetime, most of the farms have disappeared and they've gone into luxury homes and barn conversions. So I'm really pleased that this is something different. I know the site well, and I've visited the farm many a time with my role as a councillor. The 2-bedroom cottage, which is in question, that officers think should be made into a manager's home, is, if you could imagine, a terraced house, an end terraced house, probably 12, 14 foot wide, with no garden to the front, no garden to the rear, and with access to the farm right past the front door. That wouldn't be attractive to a managerial role. You're looking at somebody earning maybe £40,000 to £50,000 on this site. Maybe I've got it wrong and it could be more. By moving the new manager into the existing farmhouse and Mr. Jones moving to the new dwelling, I think it's the only way we should go. Slightly disappointed with Paul Mead's comments about the advantages of building new houses. I won't go into the debate today, Paul, but I think you need to question yourself on that. It's you know, there's a lot of new energy out there, warmer houses, but we won't go there today. So, members, I'm urging you, please, to support this application. This is a great opportunity for more residents in a rural ward, supporting rural schools, supporting the rural community, and supporting this great organic farm we have in HENDRERWYDD. Thank you, members.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think, Brian, I'm sure you want to say something about climate change, so keep it nice and brief for us, please.
No, it's just chasing just a bit of clarification. Apologies if I missed it. I raised the point about the use of the building if the application is passed here this morning. It will be solely in support of the business if this application goes through, yeah?
Yeah, no, it would be. Yeah.
And likewise on the housing, I've got to get this in, what Paul said there. Basically, we might as well not put any houses in the new LDP then, and then that'll cut down the carbon for that'll come off building properties and what have you.
Yeah, I don't think that's what Paul was saying. Okay, anyway, moving swiftly on. Okay, if I come back to Mervyn, just to go through your reasons to want to go against officer's recommendation, if that's okay.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I believe that the application does now fit in with TAN 6. The siting and the location of the property is where it is because other sites have been sourced on the farm and weren't suitable. So that's where the siting of the new property is. The 2-bedroom cottage that's next door hasn't been developed and it's not suitable as a family accommodation for managing the role. Sorry, I'll put my camera off.
Yeah,
I'll start again.
Yeah, just we got.
I think that it does sit in with TAN 6. The siting of the property was considered on the site, and there are areas that it wouldn't fit in. So the new property is going where it is because of the other candidate sites weren't suitable. The 2-bedroom cottage, which is an old cottage, wasn't extended, hasn't been extended, and wouldn't be suitable because the location of that cottage on the farm for a managerial role. So I'm saying that that cottage isn't suitable for the accommodation for the new employer. So I stick with that one, Chair.
Okay, I'll just bring in the legal officer for that one.
Sorry, just to be safe, you mentioned not suitable for a managerial role. Just to remind you, that's not a material planning consideration.
So are you suggesting it's not a suitable dwelling?
I'm suggesting it's not a suitable dwelling for the farm manager on the site. It's not big enough. The cottage isn't big enough to attract a family to live in it just because it's a 2-bedroom house.
Okay.
Because we have to advertise this nationally. It takes some getting for some staff to come and work. Staff is very short and difficult to get hold of at the moment, and putting a good quality house there is something that's important. I would second Brian's condition on putting the condition of a farm worker's house on the new house also.
Yeah, I'll come back to legal. So I think part of the issue is, I appreciate it, is that, I totally understand your points. Absolutely. I think it's just the size of the current dwelling and what it would be. Who wants to come in?
It says in the paperwork that it's a sizable accommodation. It isn't a sizable accommodation. It could be if it had been done as the plans had been made into a 3 or 4 bedroom house, as Paul says. That hasn't happened, and it is just a 2-bedroom end cottage, which isn't suitable for the client, that is suitable for what's required on the farm.
Yeah. Okay. Let me just bring in.
I think, sorry, Chair, I think Paul Griffin's just clarifying in terms of the size there. I think the issue here, the argument around an existing building on a farm not being suitable for a farm worker is a bit of a loose argument, isn't it? That really to build something further away from the farm to help management. I don't get that somehow. It strikes me as though there is sufficient space within the existing building. There's a permission for a holiday let. If you were, you've got to look at the way you can potentially manipulate the planning process here to get a holiday let, and then argue the case that you now need a whole new dwelling away from the farm enterprise, effectively further away from where this particular building is. That's why you've got these policies and the way that these things are written to really promote farming and to make sure that there's the right amount of staff on site to manage a farm. We're not arguing that in any way, shape or form, but some of the arguments that are being given here around climate change and other things, around building a whole new property further away from the farm, when you've got a building that could potentially accommodate 4-bedroom accommodation for someone. I don't know what this manager requires in terms of accommodation, but it seems suitable to officers. So that's why we're needing a challenge, because this is the territory of.
Glad you find this funny, Paul. I'm glad you find it funny, Paul. That a manager might need feel we need quality accommodation. I'm glad you find it funny with that bit of a smirk you've got there.
Well, I think we're getting to the point here, members, where the challenge that's being made here in terms of the main planning policy principles of building a new dwelling in the open countryside, we're not hearing suitable arguments from you why you should be going against your policy. We're trying to protect the council's interest in terms of a potential judicial review. So I sit here and look at members smirking and laughing all the time in relation to that, using their arguments. We're trying to defend the council's position here. And what I'm seeing is not enough of a reason to go against the officer recommendation. We don't argue that there is a need here, but why we're gonna have to challenge why that building can't be used.
Chair, the applicant has all suggested that this cottage could be used for his temporary accommodation for his staff. Although it's down as holiday accommodation, it's something that they would use for temporary accommodation for their staff during the busy times of the season. What they're after is to be able to use the main farmhouse for the farm manager.
Yeah, I don't know whether that's up for debate to bring in Paul Griffin.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the sort of idea that, yes, it would certainly be convenient for a third worker to be there, but the tests that we've got show there's a functional need for 2 workers to be living on site. So whilst we can see the attraction to the business for that, and we don't want to sort of harm a business or anything, but there's no justification to be able to keep that in reserve. What I would like to remind members of is the wording from the technical advice note 6, where it deals with alternative accommodation. I'll just read this section to you. You'd have to be certain that the functional need for the additional worker the accommodation could not be fulfilled by another dwelling or by converting an existing suitable building already on the land holding comprising the enterprise. So in this instance, the tests are very clear that even if there was a sort of semi-redundant barn on the site, we should be looking at converting that before we look at a new dwelling. In this instance, we're even a step ahead of converting a traditional barn into a dwelling. We've actually got a holiday let that, although in its current state, there may be an argument, not a planning argument, but there's an argument you can understand the drive of the enterprise to say, well, we're not really going to get the sort of person we want in because it's not big enough. But surely there are plans in place that show that that holiday let could be improved to be 100 square meters, 4-bedroom dwelling. You know, a revised planning application to extend that, you could upgrade it even better. That is exactly what the tests are saying. That's the sequential sort of line of argument that you should be going down. You know, you look through the options first. The very bottom of the pile is a new dwelling in the open countryside, especially when it's slightly more divorced from the site than the current one. That has to be the option that we look at and support, is that the holiday let can be the dwelling that's needed on site. I just want members to be clear on that. Thank you.
And officers, what you're saying is that option has not been explored.
It's not been explored. They've looked at it from a non-planning reasons as to why they want to keep it as a holiday let. In planning terms, that doesn't justify allowing a new dwelling in the open countryside. We should be looking at that unit and ignoring what, with all due respect, is little more than personal convenience by not using that unit.
Chair, I'm going to change my quote slightly then to that the building that's there isn't suitable for development for the type of accommodation required.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we can definitely see, you know, sitting here as chair, I can obviously definitely see both sides of this argument. I mean, we obviously officers are just trying to make sure that the reasons behind it are robust, so we can go to the vote. So bring in the legal officer now.
Chair, can I just put that comment in again, that I'm saying that the building isn't suitable for development without being structurally tested.
Thank you. Can you please expand on that? Provide a bit more information on why?
Because it's an old uninsulated stone building that is not suitable for.
You've gone off again, Merv. Sorry, take your camera off. We didn't hear you said it's unsuitable for, and then we didn't hear the last bit.
All right, I'll put the camera off. Yeah, it's an old stone building. It's the older part of the building which hasn't got any thermals or insulation. I'm not an engineer at all, but one of the reasons for not doing that was because the building wasn't suitable for development.
Okay. Are we happy, legal officer? Yeah.
Well, I think there's potentially a risk. You look at risk, don't you, legally? Whether or not that's a material planning consideration, whether that's sufficient to depart from the policy, the failures in the tests. I suppose looking at this, well, obviously there's not going to be an appeal with the applicant because they're going to be content with that. The risk, I suppose, is in relation to judicial review with an interested party. Potentially that is you know, uncomfortable with the possible decision today, and they would look at that and take the view perhaps that that's not a sufficient material planning consideration because it hasn't been expanded properly.
Okay.
So you just need to be careful. That's all. I'm here to protect the council. I'm here to protect the planning committee. But that's my view. If you can try and expand even more, then that would be better if it's material planning considerations. Thank you.
Okay, so I think that's clear, and obviously members can obviously now make up their mind, knowing the potential risk. They can obviously, most members here have been on planning enough to know when officers are talking about risk, they know about that and they make decisions knowing there's risk to every decision we make. So that's, I think, clear. Okay, I think we are going to go to the vote because I think we've got to the crux of where we're at with this. As always, it will be ORBLIDE for if you want to vote for the application. So that would be against officer recommendation. So you say ORBLIDE for if you want to vote to grant planning permission against officer recommendation. Obviously, you'd vote an admin against if you want to go against it, or you can obviously have the choice of a MATEL abstain. Okay. So if there's no further comments, then we will go to the vote. Okay, so Councillor Joan Butterfield.
Thank you, Chair. I'm for officer's recommendation and I'm against this application.
Councillor Ellie Chard.
ORBLIDE.
So you are for the application to grant. Councillor Anne Davis.
For.
Councillor Peter Evans.
For.
Okay, yeah, if we can, if we can just expand on it, just because this might be a close vote, if we can just expand on our vote to just say if we're for the application, just so we can hear it really clearly on Zoom. So Councillor Anne Davis, you're for granting the application.
For granting the application, please.
Thank you. Councillor Peter Evans.
For granting the application.
Thank you. Councillor Brian Jones.
For granting the application.
Councillor Tina Jones.
For granting the application, Chair.
Cynghorydd Gwyneth Kensler.
A MATEL.
A MATEL. Diolch. Councillor Christine Marston.
With officer's decision to refuse.
Thank you. Councillor Bob Murray, I don't think you've been, I'm not sure if he's here or whether he's been here for the whole part. Okay. Councillor Mervyn Parry.
For this application.
Councillor Paul Penlington. Councillor Pete Prendergast.
Refuse.
Refuse.
Against this application.
Thank you. Councillor Peter Scott.
For the application.
For the application, yeah.
Yes.
Councillor Tony Thomas, I think, is left. Councillor Julian Thompson-Hill. I didn't hear Julian, sorry. Can't hear you, Julian. If you want to write it in the chat, I can't see you either. Where are you? You can do a thumb up or a thumb down, Julian. Yeah, actually, they're against the application. Okay, so that's clear. That is in a chat message that is against the application. Councillor Joe Welch, I am against the application. Cynghorydd Emrys Wyn.
In erbyn y cais.
Against, and Councillor Mark Young.
For the application.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, we have. Okay, 861. So we have for the application, we have 8 votes. Against the application, we have 6 votes. And abstain, we have 1 vote. Therefore, that application has been granted against officer recommendation, and the conditions will come back to committee. Okay, I think with this one again, it's been quite close. I think this one can come back to committee. Okay, thank you very much. Right, we're moving on to agenda item 7, where we have another speaker. Then we can possibly have a short break after agenda item 7. So agenda item 7 is page 101 of our reports. The ward is RHYL South. The ward members are Councillor Ellie Chard and Councillor Janet Chamberlain-Jones. The application number is 45/2021/0187/PF. The proposal is the change of use of land and erection of a further education engineering centre building, formation of a new vehicular access, construction of an internal site access road and car park together with landscaping and associated works. The location is LLANDRILLO College, CEFNDY Road, RHYL, LL18 2HG. There is a little bit of information on the blue sheets that you can just be reading as you will see there. We have no public speaker against. Officer recommendation is to grant this application. We have a public speaker for, which is a Mr. Lawrence Wood, the applicant. So when you are ready, Mr. Wood, you will have 3 minutes to address the committee.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today in support of our application. Over the past 15 years, thousands of people from RHYL and wider Denbighshire have benefited from high quality education and training based at our campus at RHYL on CEFNDY Road. In 2019, Group Llandrillo Menai made the strategic decision to further develop our provision in RHYL by transferring Coleg Llandrillo's engineering provision from our Rowson-C campus in Conway County to this proposed Centre of Excellence in RHYL. This underpins our long-term commitment to offering high-quality education and training in RHYL for RHYL. Funding totalling around £12 million has now been confirmed by Welsh Government and Group Llandrillo Menai. This is now ready to be deployed. This will generate new socio-economic benefits for RHYL and Denbighshire for many years to come, increase jobs in the area, and will also bring additional community benefits during the build. Working in partnership with renewable energy companies like RWE Renewables and with strong links to companies like Airbus, this new Centre of Excellence will provide people with the very latest skills in renewable engineering and energy, as well as new advanced manufacturing skills linked to Industry 4.0. This strong partnership with employers will be hardwired into the provision. New training and development opportunities for those who are furthest away from employment to those undertaking degree and degree apprenticeship programs will be supported by this development in RHYL. In addition, enhanced partnerships with schools in the area will bring about new opportunities for our primary and secondary school pupils, ensuring that future generations have access to and experience of the latest engineering, technology and techniques. Indeed, this Centre of Excellence will bring forth a new generation of engineers with the skills and innovative approaches that will ultimately support us all to address the climate crisis and the cause of climate emergencies in our communities. Concern has been raised related to the risk of a 1 in 200 year flood event. In response, we have an approved flood evacuation plan and have included resilience measures into the building. I would ask that the Planning Committee balance this legitimate flood risk concern against the overwhelming transformational impact that the proposed development will have. To conclude, I ask that the committee approve this transformative state-of-the-art engineering centre, unique in Denbighshire, a development that will most certainly support future economic growth, inward investment, and importantly, will contribute positively to address the factors of deprivation that place many areas in RHYL in the top 10% of deprived areas in Wales. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Do officers want to come in on this part? There is a little bit of info, or not a little bit, there's quite a lot of info on the blue sheets. Just a reminder that officers' recommendation is to grant this. So I'll bring in the local members. I don't mind who goes first. I usually bring in the local member who is a member of the planning committee, which would be Councillor Ellie Chard. But if
Morning all. I'd just like to say I would like to propose that this new extension is granted. It's going to be built for the youngsters plus residents who want to change their employment skills and learn new skills. If we have this in RHYL, we'll be able to attract more companies to this area, and it's going to be such an asset for our town. I am aware of the flooding, but I'm glad to hear that Lawrence is saying that the 200-year flooding issue. And also, just to remind everybody, we've got the RHYL 6 next door, and of course the highly awarded CEFNDY unit next door as well, plus around the corner is Ysgol Tir Morfa.
So I just feel we've got to get this proposed. Okay. And it's going to be a really good asset for RHYL and the county.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Joan Butterfield, thank you. Okay. Councillor Jeanette Chamberlain-Jones as the other local member, do you want to come in at this point?
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I think it'd be a wonderful experience for all those
Jeanette, you need to turn off your video, sorry.
seeking new employment.
Very slurry.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah, just that in fully support of this extension to the college. I think it'll be a great asset to a lot of people learning a new trade, and I really want you to all support it. It'll be a great asset for RHYL. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we've got some other speakers on this. Councillor, let's see who was first. Councillor Brian Jones.
Yeah, thanks again, Chair. Second application up this morning, and once again, that climate change agenda gets a mention. Well done, Lawrence, on your presentation there. I know if we chopped you in half, RHYL College would be there in the middle. You're absolutely committed to it, and that's fantastic. And also your staff. So good, absolutely fantastic project that's coming along. I think we all know that education's the cornerstone of building a decent society. On the flood risk front, what I can tell you is Denbighshire were fortunate to get their little mitts on somewhere around about £1 million last year for the Clwyd catchment flood risk management, and there's work going on with that now, pre-study feasibility work, and so long term that agenda, as we probably all know, has risen to high eminence. So flood risk, although it's not going to go away, the point you made will add weight to any conversations outside planning to say this is another reason why we need flood protection in this particular area. So I know we're not going to stop the flood risk threat and indeed stop flooding, but there's massive efforts going in by lots of stakeholders, and Denbighshire have got a task and Finnish Flood Group that are doing a lot of work dealing with a lot of the stakeholders, the usual Farmers Union, Natural Resources Wales, etc, etc, etc. So well done, Lawrence. I'm fully behind it, and I'm pretty hopeful that it'll be passed through here this morning. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Pete Prendergast.
Thank you, Chair. At the risk of repeating what other people have said, it's a new exciting opportunity to train young people to learn a trade and gain employment following their completion of the qualification. We must, as a council, support such a positive move by LLANDRILLO College, and it really will help our young residents in Denbighshire to gain work. I'm fully supporting this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Joan Butterfield.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, all the RHYL members, and I'm sure all members of Denbighshire County Council, are in full support of this this application. So, and I don't want to go on repeating what other people have said so well. All I would like to say that this will give many young people a skill, and that skill will lift the deprivation index in RHYL. And that is what is the most important thing, that we're skilling the young people and giving them opportunities for the future. And I think that that is the most admirable thing about this application, and I am in full support of it. And I'm sure I'm pushing on an open door. I'm sure all members will be in full support of this. I'll say no more, Chair, other than how much I do support this, and the people of RHYL do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, that's clear from those members that have spoken. I'll just bring in Paul Mead and then we can go to the vote, I think, on this one.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, all I was just wanting to say was that, you know, hearing all that members have said there, it is an unbalanced decision, this, and I just wanted to thank officers, particularly Sarah Stubbs, in relation to dealing with the application, because a lot of work goes on behind the scenes with these types of things. I know officers sometimes get a bit of criticism, but you know, in this instance, we've worked tirelessly with the college and with their agents to try and deal with the very real flood risk issue that there is here. So I want to point that flood risk issue out to members, that we've got an objection from Natural Resources Wales, and there are risks with potentially going against their recommendations. But I think when we've analysed the economic, educational and social benefits associated with this scheme, officers have written a fair report and come to a decent conclusion. So I just wanted to highlight the work that Sarah's done and others have done in relation to working with the agent and with Natural Resources Wales to get us to this recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, we will go to the vote on this one. So again, this one should be a little clearer. Okay, so it's going to be obliged for if you're voting for the application to grant it, a matter abstain or an erbyn against the application. Yeah, so it'll be obliged for to vote in favour of it in support of officer recommendation, just for full clarity. Okay, so Councillor Joan Butterfield.
I'm for.
Thank you. Councillor Ellie Chard.
For.
Councillor Ann Davis.
Oh,
Hi Anne, I heard you say, oh, it's off, but I didn't hear you vote. Oh, I heard somebody say it. I haven't got Anne's vote yet. Is she not on? Oh, somebody else then, right. Okay, that's fine. No vote there. Councillor Peter Evans.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Brian Jones.
For.
Councillor Tina Jones.
For.
And Hollywood Gwyneth Kensler.
Obliged.
Councillor Christine Marston.
For.
Is Councillor Bob Murray on? No. Councillor Mervyn Parry.
For.
Councillor Paul Pendleton's on. Councillor Pete Prendergast.
For.
Councillor Peter Scott.
For.
Councillor Julian Thompson-Hill. Your mic's still not working, Julian. You have to put it in chat. What's he doing?
Poor Julian.
Right, fine. You can see thumbs up. That's fine. It's a clearer one, this. And Councillor Joe Welch for. Cynghorau them Wyn.
Obliged.
And Councillor Mark Young.
For.
Okay, so that one, 2.
Unanimous, was it?
So that's 14 votes for, no votes against, no votes to abstain. Therefore, that application has been granted in accordance with officer recommendation. It is only 10:39. We've got a few more bits and bobs that will probably take another sort of hour or so. So if we have just a 5-minute, just a really short break now, that would be good. So back here as well, if we say 10 minutes, that 10 to, we will start bang on 10 to, okay? So if we can come back, and good luck to Mr. Wood with your with the building of it all. So thank you for your speech today. It was excellent.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
To leave at 11:15.
Yeah. Okay. Diolch yn fawr. Okay. We're moving on to agenda item number 5. And whilst this is in my ward, I am going to stay as the chair. So it's on page 17 of the report. The ward is Llanrhaeadr and Hinmerch. The ward member is me, Councillor Joe Welch. The application number is 14/2019/1009/PR. The proposal is the details of the appearance, landscaping, layout and scale of 7 dwellings submitted in accordance with condition number 1 of outline permission code number 14/2019/0233 reserved matters application. The location is land adjacent to LLYS, HEULOG, CYFFYLLIOG, RHUTHUN, LL15 2DW. Do officers want to come in first, or shall I bring in the local member? Okay, that is me. So yeah, I went to the reason this has come to committee for those. This is a reserved matters application, and it's come to committee because the local community council have objected to it, which is, if we just go to their objection, which is on page 53 and 54 of the report. So I attended the community council meeting on Monday. And I just went through those with them. So obviously I would just like to raise those points as to the community council, and hopefully officers can just come back with regards to a couple of those points. One of the reasons obviously is about traffic, because I think this has gone up from 5 to 7 houses, and obviously the provision for the social housing. So it's the balanced housing market that they were obviously concerned about as well. And I think they're the sort of obviously the main issues that the community council came up with. Thank you.
Thank you, local member, chair. Yeah, just to clarify, there's a number of objections from community council, but focusing in on the 2 key ones there. Traffic, I would just advise members that this is a reserved matters application, and that the initial outline permission, which was granted by a planning committee 2-3 years ago, that allowed for up to between 5 and 7 dwellings to be built on the site, and that took into account therefore the impact of traffic from 7 dwellings on the access. So in terms of numbers and traffic, numbers of dwellings and the traffic impact, that's actually already been taken into account and approved at planning committee through the outline consent. So that's not fundamental to this decision today. Similarly, social housing, affordable housing, it's a site for under 10 dwellings. So as in line with our affordable housing policy, sites under 10 dwellings don't need to provide affordable housing on site. They need to provide a commuted sum. That commuted sum is calculated by way of an average of the open market housing floor space, which is currently being calculated, and a legal agreement separate to this process. So a legal agreement in relation to the outline permission is being signed, well, drawn up as we speak, and hopefully will be signed in the near future should this permission get granted. So I think that covers it. Traffic already been taken account of under the outline application. 7 dwellings is within that acceptability, and social housing, it's a separate process. We'll be receiving a commuted sum towards provision of affordable housing in the community. Thank you, Chair.
And the mix of housing.
And the mix of housing, yeah, initially this reserved matters application was submitted for 4 or 5 bed dwellings, and understandably officers said, well, we need a better mix within the community. Our local housing market assessment suggests a sort of more equal split between 2, 3 and 4 plus beds. So that's where the amendment has come from. We're actually looking at around about sort of 15% for 2 beds, and then the remainder split equally between 3 beds and 4 plus beds. So in officer's opinion, this application represents a reasonable mix for the site. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Christine Marston.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just propose that we go with officer recommendation and grant this application? Thank you.
Do we have a seconder for that? Cynghorydd Gwynedd Kensler, diolch yn fawr. Cynghorydd Emrys.
Cadeirydd, ie, sori, dim ond dwi'm yn gwybod os ydy rhywun arall gyda ddim problem. Nes i ddim clywed be ddudodd y swyddog Paul Griffin am y commuted sums. Mi roedd o'n torri fyny ar y pwynt yna. Dwi'm yn gwybod os mae'n ymddangos.
Yeah, your video.
Yeah, turn your video off, Emrys.
Yeah, just turn your video off. But I think you were talking about you just wanted to know about the commuted sum. So Paul.
Yeah, I didn't hear Paul Griffin's section of that. So obviously the problem is my end. It was breaking up, so I turned my camera off. But hopefully I can hear that sentence or two now from Paul Griffin.
Well, yeah, just to reiterate that affordable housing on the site is to be dealt with by way of a financial payment, a commuted sum. That's to be secured through a legal agreement that's currently being drawn up and negotiated. This approach is in line with our adopted policy that sites under 10 dwellings don't provide affordable housing on site. They make payment towards provision of affordable housing within the wider community. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, we've had a proposal, we've had a seconder. I think all my questions as local member have been answered. So we will go to the vote. So it's going to be 4 to vote for this reserved matters application in accordance with officer recommendation, or against the NEDBIN, if you are against it, or abstain a matter. So again, going through, Councillor Joan Butterfield.
I'm for.
Councillor Ali Chard.
For.
Councillor Ann Davis. Okay. Councillor Peter Evans.
For.
Councillor Brian Jones.
For.
Councillor Tina Jones.
For.
Horace Gwyneth Kensler.
Obliged.
Councillor Christine Marston.
For.
Bob Murray. No. Councillor Mervyn Parry.
For.
Councillor Pete Prendergast.
For.
Councillor Peter Scott.
For.
Councillor Julian Thompson-Hill. Okay, thanks, Julian. Councillor Joe Welch, I'm for. Cynghorydd Emrys Wyn.
Obliged.
And Councillor Mark Young.
For.
Okay. If anyone else, I haven't called out anyone else's name, just say now, because I know a couple of people might be joining the meeting. Okay, so we have 14 for, no against, no abstain. Therefore, that application has been granted in accordance with officer recommendation. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 8, which is on page 149 of our reports. The ward is St Asaph East. The ward member is Councillor Andrew Thomas. The application number is 46/2021/0727/PF. The proposal is the erection of one detached dwelling and associated works. The location is the land at and part garden of the Croft, Upper Denby Road, St Asaph, LL17 ORW. Okay, let's just see. There is a little bit of information on the blue sheets, just with regards to the officer recommendation is to grant. There's just a correction on the officer's notes on condition 4, so that's on the blue sheets. So just to be aware of that one. I think Peter Scott is going to come in first on this one.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Similar to yours, it was the City Council put in an objection, and again, if the officers could just update on a few things that we thought might be a problem. We did worry about over intensification on a small cul-de-sac affair. Was it going to be too many buildings in that site? Overlooking Fron Hall, which is to the north of where the new building is going to be. Looks like the building might look into the back gardens of the terraces in Fron Hall. Is that a problem? And access onto the A525. We did worry about that with it being a main road and access, although I have seen a highway report where they say it's a double access and egress, so that's not a problem, they don't think. But the other two things, over intensification and overlooking Front Hall, have the officers got views on that, Chair? That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's one that officers are sort of, it is a balanced one. I'll be honest, we've sort of looked at it from both sides here. I can understand the concerns of the City Council on this one. However, when you take a step back and you apply our standards, the separation distances, the relationship in terms of distance and outlook of the proposed dwelling, it actually meets our guidance. I think in terms of sort of intensity, normally we'd make an assessment of that as to whether or not there was sufficient space around the site. Well, again, looking at the amount of garden area that a proposal is supposed to have, so a minimum of 40 square metres, it meets that requirement. And it also provides sufficient parking within the site for the unit. I think you have to take into account as well the sort of the character of the area, you know, from the actual way the site relates to the building surrounding it. I don't think it would appear particularly intense a use. I don't think visually it would have a great impact on the street scene unless you walked down that private driveway and stood there and observed it. So I think on balance, officers clearly came to the case that it was quite a hard proposal to actually mount a case against. I don't think we like things negatively, but I think definitely given the concerns raised by the City Council, we did look into the possibility of refusing it, and we've come to the conclusion it would be quite difficult to sustain a refusal on that reason. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It seems nice.
Okay, Chair, on that basis, I'm happy to propose that we grant the application then, if that's okay.
Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Mark Young, thank you. Do we have any other speakers on this item? No. Yeah, so that is a proposal to grant in accordance with officer recommendation. Yeah, not hearing anything other than that, so that's fine. Okay, so we will go to the vote on this one. So again, it will be 4 if you want to grant in accordance with officer recommendation, against if you want to go against, and a Matt will abstain as an option. Okay, so Councillor Joan Butterfield.
4.
Councillor Ellie Chard.
4.
Councillor Peter Evans.
4.
Councillor Brian Jones.
4.
Councillor Tina Jones.
4.
Horace Gwyneth Kensler.
Obliged.
Councillor Christine Marston.
4.
Councillor Mervyn Parry.
4.
Councillor Pete Prendergast. You there?
No, not there.
Oh, okay. Councillor Peter Scott.
4.
Councillor Julian Thompson Hill. 4. Thank you.
It's like Gladiator.
Councillor Joe Welch. 4. Cynghoredd Emrys Wyn. Blind. I could lip read that. You're on mute. I lip read it. I lip read it. Sorry.
All blind.
Councillor Mark Young.
4.
Okay, thank you. So that's 13 votes for, no against, and no abstain. Therefore, that has been granted in accordance with officer recommendation. Okay, we've got a couple more agenda items to go. The actual applications. Agenda item 9, as you will see, okay, is there is a tiny bit of info on the late reps, which I think you were also communicated by the applicant, that obviously the planning permission shall be begun no later than the 10th of November 2026, rather than 2021, which it says in the report. So this is on page 181, and it's agenda item 9. And this is the planning conditions. So if you remember last month, so for those that weren't here last month, if I just recap over this, members decided to grant planning application against the officer recommendation. And when that happens, as has happened today, officers don't obviously put any conditions on that at the meeting. So they either just get discussed by the officers and the local member, or they come back to planning committee. So that's the position we're in today. So this is like an extension of last month's planning committee. It's still part of the very same process. It's not a separate process where we then go and re-debate everything. So we've had the debate. From that debate, what were the conditions that we would have put on? And then officers have drawn up these conditions based on the debate that we had last time. Okay, this is not the time to have a new debate about anything, because we've had that debate. This is the continuation of that. It's not a separate debate about it. This is, if we'd have had it, you could have done this an hour later, the officers could have come up with the conditions and we'd have put them on there and then, but obviously we give it the time to do that. So the purpose of the report, let me just be clear. Members will recall that planning application reference 40/2021-039 was discussed at the October Planning Committee. The application related to the erection of a 198-bed registered care home use class C2, landscaping, parking facilities and associated works on the St Asaph Business Park. Committee resolved to grant planning permission contrary to officers' recommendations, subject to the planning commission conditions being brought back to committee for approval. This report seeks members' approval on the conditions to be imposed on the planning consent. And obviously you've got those conditions there. Okay, so we will, at the end, we'll need a proposal and a seconder, just like a regular planning application. And we'll go to the vote where we will go through it individually on this one. Okay, so that is that. You've obviously had some information from the applicant over the last couple of days. Do officers want to come in before we go out? No? Okay, so we've got a few speakers on this one. So let me just see in order. I've got Councillor Mervyn Parry first.
Switch my camera off. Yeah, sorry, Chair. I wasn't here on the last planning meeting, but I'm just looking on page 184 with the noise conditions. Number 9, all habitable rooms in development hereby approved shall be fitted with windows which are opening and retainers set at all times unless for emergency evacuation. In the interest of the protection of residential care home residents from unacceptable levels of noise. Now, I think that possibly that's almost an unacceptable one myself, only that if the resident is in the room, want some fresh air, they can open the window, they can put a restricted opening on that window so that nobody can either fall out of the window. But the resident then would have the opportunity themselves, if they didn't want the noise, to close it and open it if they wanted the fresh air. Can I just ask officers just on their thoughts on that one on page 184 on the noise number 9? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's probably where the debate is going to be around, is on that one. So I'll bring in other members first and then officers can come in on that. So I've got Councillor Peter Scott.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think I'm going in the same direction as Mervyn. I have properties in Panglas in St Asaph which back onto the slip road of the A55 out of St Asaph, which goes uphill. It's an acceleration lane. The residents there have asked for noise abatement. North Wales Trunk say it isn't that bad and they don't think we should have a noise reduction scheme on that site there. If you move that observation down to where the business park is and where this care home is, that slip road is a de-acceleration lane, so the noise, in my opinion, should be quieter than the one on where North Wales Trunks don't think we need noise reduction. So I can't see any reason at all why we can't have windows that open on this care home, and I think it's something that should be done. They're only going to open 3.5 inches. As Mervyn said, they can be closed if the noise is too great, but I don't think the noise there will be as great as on a de-acceleration lane as would be on an acceleration lane where North Wales Trunk say we don't need noise reduction scheme. That's my comments, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brian Jones.
Yes, and I can come in on the back of Councillor Scott there. I was involved with the NUTRA, the North Wales Trunk Road Agency, that looked at the noise levels on the carriageway there to what Councillor Scott has just referred to, and their conclusion was, and we probably need to accept they are the experts, they run the major network in North Wales on the highways and byways, so no issue for them with noise. I'm obviously going to propose, if Mr. Scott doesn't want to get in first, the condition number 9 is refused. If I can digress, yeah.
Removed.
Yeah, remove that condition. I know the officer Paul made a comment before about members smirking, or sorry, he was accused of smirking, and then he said, well, members do smirk and he has to sit and look at that. But on this condition number 9, I used to be a bingo caller and doctor's orders was number 9, so I don't know if that's got any relevance or whether it'll raise a smile, the condition number 9. Yeah,
happy to second that, Chair.
I'm happy to second that, Chair, if you want. Sorry, Peter,
yeah,
or whoever, Mervyn.
Yeah, couple of other points on this number 9, without causing embarrassment. Denbighshire, I did a bit of digging. We use care homes, private care homes, that have got no mechanical ventilation. Their windows open, and so why would we want to put a condition on this one if we're actually using in the private sector care homes that go against what would be the condition here? So that would be one reason, certainly, why I'd say that we knock this one off. And then finally, on a bit of a soapbox thing, you know, we should be working with businesses in Denbighshire and not trying to do things that appear to them that we're working against them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, I'll bring in the officers at this point.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just again, I think the legal officer might want to come in as well on this, just to remind members of the thread of this particular planning application. The applicant submitted a noise report with their own application that came to committee in June. That noise assessment report said that it accepted that there could be unacceptable noise from the A55 and surrounding industrial uses. Officers were therefore clearly recommending refusal on the planning application in June, but members, and I think it's minuted, including Councillor Jones, said that we want to go against officer recommendation because conditions can be imposed to make sure that the windows stay closed and therefore no noise wouldn't be an issue. bit tricky to argue against what was minuted in the previous report, and therefore that's why we've gone away and put the conditions on that members said that they wanted on the basis of going against the previous recommendation. So I think the difficulty that we've got here again is this issue of a legal basis for things. The legal basis that was given at the previous committee was that the noise report clearly accepted that there was going to be noise impact on the residents of the home, and members, you know, are on record of saying, well, impose conditions to make sure the windows close. So we've done that, and I don't see why we should be taking that off. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, if I can come back on that, Chair, as in every case, in every walk of life, when the information on the table changes, then you're perfectly entitled to change your point of view. And as I said, I did a little bit of digging around and found out that we as an authority are using care homes where the windows are not sealed, they haven't got any mechanical ventilation. Surely there'll be officers here that know where those care homes are in RHYL, and so the information's changed on the table. Why put a project to extra cost if there's no need? Because that's what it means. It's extra cost. You don't want extra cost when you're in the private sector running a business facility.
All right, I'll bring in the legal officer just briefly.
Thank you, Chair. Just to remind members, and just to echo what Paul had just said, the planning officer just said previously, if you just refer to page 12 of the bundle, page 12, which is the minutes from the last committee, where permission was granted contrary to officer recommendation in relation to this application. You can see on page 12, let me just see, midway, there's a reference to where it says vote. Above that, there's reference to Councillor Brian Jones, and I'll read it out, clarified the reasons for granting were that the close proximity to the A55 trunk road and the B2 site were not applicable, as noise mitigation, that is lessening the effects, was not an issue, as it could be overcome through planning conditions. Now, obviously, you're in a situation where you need to make a determination on these proposed planning conditions. There is no doubt legally a legitimate expectation that there'll be a condition in respect of noise mitigation in the circumstances, given what was agreed previously. So there is a legal legitimate expectation on that point. And just to assist members really in relation to sort of like the legality considerations of planning conditions, just to help with that, to focus, planning conditions basically they have to be necessary, they have to be relevant to planning, relevant to the development to be permitted, they have to be enforceable, they also have to be precise and reasonable in all other respects. Now, there's also plenty of authoritative case law which explains and helps with clarifying planning conditions. One, which is Newbury District Council versus Secretary of State, House of Lords, is that a condition must be imposed for a planning purpose only and not any ulterior motive. The condition must fairly and reasonably relate to the development permitted by the planning permission, and the condition shall not be so unreasonable that no reasonable planning authority could have imposed it. So those are really sort of to assist with the considerations on that. But I do urge you to look at what was previously decided and on what basis the reasoning was. You're happy with you granted the development as it could be mitigated by way of appropriate planning conditions to mitigate that noise issue particularly. So you just need to be mindful of that, really. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there is no way that the officers, based on the previous month's meeting, could have not put in something about non-opening windows, because that was discussed at length last month. And what we have to remember is, whilst there has been a month in time, this is a continuation of that one thing. So we have granted it for certain reasons. We then have to put the condition. If we then find out we don't agree with some of those, or that it doesn't work or something or other, then there's a process for that, possibly at a later date. But we just have to be really, really careful. We can't not have planning conditions for things that we've said, well, we grant it if we put planning conditions on it. So we do have to be really, really careful. I totally understand people's points of view on it with regards to the opening of the window for amenity rather than a necessary point. But we just have to be really clear what we are getting at on this. So I'll bring in Councillor Brian Jones. Do you want to come back, and then I'll bring in
very quickly? Yeah, just to say again, and the quote from the minutes on page 12 were relevant on the day. If we're living in democracy, if information changes on the table, surely you're entitled to relook and tweak it and cut and shut it if it's deemed appropriate. So it's clear that the noise isn't going to be a problem, and that's what we said at the last committee meeting. Now we're saying it won't be a problem if the windows are open. Councillor Peter Scott's added to that. So any more clarification on that, perhaps?
Okay, I'll bring in Paul Griffin. Do you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think it's important, as the Chair pointed out, that this is still actually a continuation of the previous committee. So it's worth reminding members of the consultation responses received on this application, in particular the Welsh Government's response as highway authority for the A55 trunk road, in which, as the Welsh ministers directed, so that's a legal requirement from them, that any permission granted shall include the following condition. And that condition was that due to the site's proximity to the trunk road, the applicant shall provide adequate noise mitigation measures within the design of the development. So clearly Welsh Government as trunk road agency are telling us that you have to, there's an issue there with noise, you have to have noise mitigation measures. The case officer at the time then went back to the Welsh Government to seek clarification on that condition, and suggested that, as the applicant's submission stated, that they could do ventilation through mechanical means, and therefore that windows wouldn't have to be closed. That was their suggested noise mitigation, and the Welsh Government accepted that that was the mitigation that should be in place. So that's the non-openable window has effectively been directed by the Welsh Government. So if we were to try and progress this set of conditions without that condition on, before we could issue it, we'd have to then re-inform the Welsh Government that we were actually ignoring their direction, and see where that would lead to. Just thought it'd be useful for members just to reflect back on what the discussion was. I mean, 4 weeks ago, we all forget what was happening yesterday, so it's probably useful just to be reminded of that. Thank you, Chair.
If I can come back then, Chair. Obviously, you guys are the experts. Certainly, I'm not claiming to be, but if we just skip around the corner from, say, Asif on the Rhuthun bypass there was noise issues there with properties, etc., and they put up sound deadening barriers. They didn't lock all the windows in the houses and put a recommendation there for that. They put barriers there. They're there, sound deadening proof barriers, and they do it further along the A55 in Colwyn Bay. So there's one other option. It doesn't necessarily have to be closed windows, does it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously people can, you know, if and I'm not trying to direct people where to vote, but if this was granted with all the conditions on, obviously the applicant could then work with officers and look at removing it or working with changing it and things. That is obviously still an option, but we're not obviously discussing different options today. Anyway, I'll bring in Paul Mead.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it was just to echo your point, really, that any planning conditions that do get imposed on a planning consent, the applicants have got the right of appeal against planning conditions, so that might be the most appropriate route. I think without doing that, and with trying to remove condition 9 here, it's opening ourselves up as a planning committee to a bit of a nonsensical set of arguments at the previous planning committee. So I think I'd just urge members that there is a legal process that the applicant has got here. If they're not content with condition 9, that they can appeal it. They can also submit a planning application to vary or to remove condition 9 as part of a separate planning application. And again, on that planning application, we'd probably consult with the Welsh Government Trunk Road Agency and others. But fundamentally, the issue that it was granted at planning committee before, against officer recommendation, because we did have concerns that this would crop up, that this issue around noise could not be adequately mitigated. Why would you want to seal windows and lock people within a care home? That was our argument before. You went against that argument, and therefore we were told to put a condition on, which is what we've done. So I think the logical approach for planning committee here, as advised by the legal officer and by the chair, is to accept condition 9, which is what you wanted, and allow the applicant to challenge that through the legal processes that they've got. Thank you, Chair.
Tim, do you want to come? Legal officer's going to come in.
Thank you, Chair. Just to echo what was said before and previously, I think what we've got here is planning permission has been granted, but it was granted on terms, and those terms were for mitigation of the noise concern by way of conditions. That's there. It's there. And it's also captured in the minutes and captured in the proceedings. There is a departure from that now, and to remove that proposed condition in relation to noise, there is a heightened risk of judicial review from interested parties that may extend to Welsh Government. So you just need to be very mindful of that. I think the core legal issue is there is a legitimate expectation, given what was decided before, that element of the condition in relation to noise will be determined at this committee or at some point soon. A departure from that runs the real risk of legal challenge, and obviously with that comes legal costs, financial costs, risks, as well as reputational risk and harm as well to the authority. And I'm here to protect the council as a whole, as well as the planning committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Peter Scott.
Thank you, Chair. Unfortunately, at the last meeting, I had to leave pretty soon after joining because the wife wasn't very well, and so you didn't hear the evidence I've just given today on the day of the meeting, and I feel that might have helped with this noise mitigation. I listened to the webcast when I got home from the hospital and felt the way it was going that people wanted the windows to be opened, and I thought the condition would be that the windows could be closed if required to keep up the noise, but did have an opening facility. So I'm just disappointed, but listening to where we're going, we'll probably have to go with it and let the applicants appeal against 9, but I don't think that. I think it's a bit too strong to be in there, the windows can't open in a care home. Again, my opinion, Chair. So I'm sorry I had to leave the meeting last 4 weeks ago, but I think my statement might have helped. But there you go. Thank you.
Okay, legal officer's just going to come.
So classic error there. Just to remind members, I think in the proposed condition in relation to noise mitigation, forgive me, I'm just going to quickly flick to it now. If anyone has the exact page number, grateful, thank you. So yeah, let's read it out. So proposed condition: all habitable rooms in the development hereby approved shall be fitted with windows which are non-opening and retained at all such time, unless for an emergency evacuation. So I guess there is the option to open them, of course, in an emergency. I'm just sort of, I'll flag that and raise that with members really. So they're not shut permanently. They can actually be opened in certain emergency circumstances. Thank you.
Okay, we've got a couple more speakers. I think obviously we're getting to the point where we know where we're voting on this, okay, and we'll figure out how we're going to vote on it, with a potential removal of a condition or not, in a moment. Councillor Mervyn Parry.
Yeah, just a quick one, Chair. If the officers can come back on where they say that conditions can't be removed once they're put there, could they just maybe comment on the conditions for the ramps on the retail park in Denby? They got removed by officers, just as an example that it can happen at times. And possibly with the windows, you know, that could be opened. I think it's Well, I'm not going to go there. They've had the argument on that one. But I'm just thinking of the conditions can be removed sometimes by officers. And one of the examples was the ramps on the retail park in Denby that was removed by officers. Thank you.
Now you're making officers think back quite a few years as to whether it was. Are you suggesting it was before the determination of the application?
Well, I'm just saying. Let me take my camera off again. I'm just saying that officers can remove them when it suits, and they do.
Yeah.
So if we can't remove a condition 9 on this one, I don't know what's the difference. Maybe they can explain that one if they say they can't move a condition, because it seems to me quite a simple one to do with noise mitigation. I do understand, but that could be done with the design of the type of window that could be put there. Because I think for the residents living in the accommodation, for their well-being, to be able to open a window to get some fresh air and close it, and when that window's closed, that window when closed is designed to reduce the noise, maybe more than just your standard window, and that it doesn't open any more than the given amount that that was previously said. I wasn't in the last meeting, but I just think that for well-being of residents there, I'm sure that mitigating the noise with fresh air, natural fresh air rather than mechanical fresh air, has got to be good for the residents.
Thanks. Yeah, we are veering off into having a debate about the actual application. What we've got to remember is I know some people weren't here, so there is a slight difference in who's voting on it, but we're not having. We granted it last month. Again, officers were saying we shouldn't grant it because you can't have a care home with closed windows. We basically said, well, you can, because we can have it with mechanical air. Or whatever, however it was all phrased. So we were saying that. So officers had to put in this condition because we said it.
Point of order there, Chair. I'm just coming back onto the bit that I said when officers said they can't remove conditions when they can remove them when it suits. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, okay. I'll bring Paul Griffin on that one.
Thank you, Chair. No, just to clarify, this is quite an unusual situation. There's obviously a resolution to grant planning permission subject to conditions being put in place. One of those conditions was noise mitigation. This permission hasn't even been issued yet. So what we would be saying is that conditions can be varied, conditions can be removed post-decision, but we're not actually post-decision yet. So we need to make the decision, and the correct process really should be for the applicant to come back to us if they can't meet that condition, to discuss alternatives. It's clear from the Welsh Government's direction to us that we need to have noise mitigation in place. So although we may all be aware of different sites with different situations and different mitigation measures, the fact is on this application, the Welsh Government have directed that we have noise mitigation. As we stand at this point, the only mitigation that seems to be workable is that the windows don't open. However, this is the wrong time to be discussing those details. We can't go out to consultation. We can't go back to Welsh Government to tell them that the change. What should happen, theoretically, is we can issue this permission with that condition in place. Then the applicant come back to us with an alternative means, and we could vary that condition. Now, whether that's actually achievable or not, that would be the test of that variation of condition application. And in my opinion, that would be the simplest way forward, and would afford us the opportunity to cleanly reconsult with the Welsh Government Trunk Road Agency to make sure that they aren't put into a position at some point in the future where they have to then, out of their own funds, put in mitigation measures because we didn't fully consider it properly in planning committee. So to me, the suggestion would be that encouraging the applicant to consider a Section 73 variation of condition at a later date would be the way forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, bring in the legal officer now.
Thank you. Just to reiterate, the members have previously made a decision, and that was based upon okay, there were concerns about noise, etc. But there was a consensus that that could be managed by way of appropriate conditions to mitigate those that risk, to mitigate those concerns. It's clearly there. That was the rationale behind the decision at the last committee, and to go against that would perhaps be contrary. There'll be an issue with, that there is certainly a legitimate expectation that such conditions will be looked at now and resolved. So to depart from that does run a legal risk. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Brian Jones.
Yeah, I think Councillor Tony Thomas was in before me, Chair. I don't know.
No, your hand's first up.
Right, okay, then have we got a proposal to remove this condition 9?
We do.
We do. We've got a proposal. We've got a seconder.
Have.
We've got a seconder, right? I just wanted clarification on that. Last couple of points from me then. If the windows, if it is removed and you can open the windows, that doesn't mean to say that you have to open the windows. It's just there if it's required. That could be a point of well-being for elderly people. I'm 65 on Christmas Day. My hearing's not what it was. So in 10 years' time, my hearing's going to deteriorate quite a bit more, I would have thought. So I think that we can remove this condition. Why put it through a process which the legal officer has just told us about? We're the planning committee. We can remove it if that's the will of the planning committee members. And I don't think the applicants are going to go to any review over it or anything like that. So I think we need to get to the vote in a minute when the speakers have finished on the matter.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Just to be clear, it wouldn't. I mean, it's removing it from here. It's not actually removing it. It would be not putting it on in the first place. There is a difference.
Correct, yeah, not put, correct, yeah, not in the first place.
Because there's been some discussion about removing of conditions. This would be not putting it on in the first place because we feel that the noise.
Maybe Councillor Murphy Parry's given us an insight into that, but has been done in the past. So on the basis of that, can be done again in the future and this morning.
Yeah, the Denby one is a different one because it wasn't before the decision was made. Councillor Tony Thomas.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just listened to one of the officers saying that the window can be opened in an emergency. So what's the difference in that then? You know, so if the windows are able to be open in an emergency, then surely the windows can't be fixed shut, can they? Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's with specialist keys, but anyway, I'll bring in Paul Mead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Yeah, I mean, I think the legal officer read out the condition in full there. It does relate to sort of emergency evacuation. I mean, I've got to say, I think we're in danger here of turning this planning committee into a bit of a farce, really, in the way that this debate has gone. One committee have asked us to put a condition on, which we've done, and now you're arguing why it shouldn't be put on. I don't know what further argument I can present, what the legal officer can present. If any of the members here today have got any particular issues they want to raise with me, with the legal officer, points of order that have been mentioned today, I'm happy to sit down with the legal officers, with the chair, with the chief exec if needed, just to see the rationale and the reasoning behind some of the debate and some of the questioning today's planning committee. This for me, I don't get it. Unfortunately, you've asked us to put a condition on, and we've done it, and now you're saying we shouldn't. So I'm at a bit of a loss here. I think the other point that I was going to make was that some members are saying that they weren't at planning committee, or they didn't hear the debate at planning committee previously. This is an extension of that planning committee debate, effectively. So if you didn't hear or weren't part of the reason that you went against officer recommendation last time, I think it's quite difficult to jump in now and say we don't want conditions and or we do want conditions. So I think you've got to understand, members, now, hand on heart, as a reasonable councillor and a part of a planning committee, how this debate has gone. I think we've done enough as officers, really, in this debate for now, so I'll hand it back to the chair. Thank you.
I don't think we need to go any further.
No. Well, if I can come back on that, Chair, very briefly, I accept what Paul Mead is saying there, but over the run of this council and over the run of this planning committee, I mean, I've seen Paul with his head on the desk in the chamber muttering on a webcast, we've got the wrong plan policy, and that, to me, as a...
We're not discussing this now. We're getting...
I know we shouldn't be, but Paul's brought it into...
Yeah, can we move on, please, Chair? Please. Now, I'm not happy with where...
We've already got into way too much detail.
Well, you close it down.
Right, we're not talking about it. Thank you. It's not that's not relevant to what we're doing. We're muddying the waters even further. Okay, as I have said, it makes no difference to me how people vote, and I'm not telling people how to vote. It's very clear that officers would put on this number 9. Okay, if people feel that noise mitigation can be done without a condition, then that's what they're voting on. Officers have clearly put this condition on because they feel that that's what that we were asking them to do. They have done their job by doing this. If we don't feel that that is necessary, then that's within our remit as councillors to make that decision. Okay, so we can come across that. So now we need to go to the vote on it, and we need to decide on how we're going to do that, because there's obviously been a proposer and a seconder to vote the condition through without number 9. I would just like to ask officers what we would vote for should we be wanting to vote it through with all the conditions. So how we would do that, because obviously there would be probably a reason to be able to vote it through or to go against it. So we just need to be clear on what we're voting on. Okay. So we can have, so what would be the, so yeah. Okay, so we're going to have a vote as to whether we want to remove the proposed condition 9. Okay, so that is going to be the first vote. Okay, so if you want to, because I think everyone obviously appreciates we need to put conditions on, so we just need to figure out, so we're going to do that one first. So if you would like to remove condition number 9, and then we'll go to the substantive vote after that. So, yeah, and yeah. So if you want to vote to remove the proposal for condition 9, you're going to vote for. If you don't want to vote to remove it, then you're going to vote against removal. Okay. So if you, hopefully that is clear, you can obviously abstain on this as well. Councillor Joan Butterfield.
Could I just ask, Chair, before I go to the vote, I am against this, but I'm against it because we've already put this onto the planning when we were debating it earlier. And I am concerned that if we vote against and leave this condition 9 in place, that the applicant will have the ability to vary the planning condition at a future date. Is that correct, Chair?
Yes, they can vary.
And that would be the usual procedure in a case like this. That we're not setting a precedent here. This is what has been the usual procedure as far as I can remember. So I am voting against if indeed the applicant has the ability to vary a condition. Thank you.
So you're against removal of the condition?
I am indeed. Thank you.
Councillor Chad?
Against.
Okay, Anne Davis isn't here. She's gone. Okay, Councillor Peter Evans. Okay, Councillor Brian Jones.
For.
Councillor Tina Jones.
For.
Gwyneth Kens's left, didn't she? Yeah. Councillor Christine Marston.
For.
Councillor Bob Murray never came. No. Okay, Councillor Mervyn Parry.
For.
Councillor Pete Prendergast.
Against.
Councillor Peter Scott.
For.
Councillor Tony Thomas.
For.
Councillor Julian Thompson Hill.
I've changed my headset, so hopefully you can hear me. Against.
Councillor Joe Welch. Against. Harder than Swin.
Unerbyn.
And Councillor Mark Young.
Against.
Okay, so we have 6 votes to remove the condition. We have 7 votes against removing the condition. So therefore that condition is going to stay on the next vote. Okay, so we're now going to be going to the next vote, which obviously is going to be voting on all the conditions. Okay, so we need a proposer and a seconder for this. So proposer, Councillor Peter Scott, Councillor Christine Marston has seconded that one. Okay, so we'll go to the vote. So obviously this is now 4 if you are going to vote for the conditions, the proposed conditions, including condition number 9. Okay, so for or abstain or against. Okay, so 4 is to vote in accordance with officer recommendation for all those conditions, including number 9. Okay, Councillor Joan Butterfield.
4.
Councillor Ellie Chard.
4.
Councillor Brian Jones.
4.
Councillor Tina Jones.
4.
Councillor Christine Marston.
4.
Councillor Mervyn Perry.
4.
Councillor Pete Prendergast.
4.
Councillor Peter Scott.
4.
Councillor Tony Thomas.
4.
Councillor Julian Thompson Hill.
4.
Councillor Joe Welch 4. Cynghorydd Emrys Wyn.
4 blaid.
And Councillor Mark Young.
4.
Okay, so that's 13 votes for, no, abstain, no against. Therefore, those conditions have been approved. Last item on the agenda is agenda item number 10. If I just go through this, okay. This is the title, it's the Planning for Dark Night Skies, the Supplementary Planning Guidance for Lighting in the Clwyddian Range and D Valley AOMB. It's the report on the public consultations. So the report is about the supplementary planning guidance, the recommendations, okay. So this is what we need to do, which is on page 188. It's 3.1 that Planning Committee agree the proposed changes to the SPG and formally adopt Planning for Dark Night Skies Supplementary Planning Guidance for Lighting in the Clwyddian Range and D Valley AOMB. The lead member on this is Councillor Mark Young and Councillor Tony Thomas, who's the chair of the AOMB Joint Committee, and Howard Sutcliffe, who's the AOMB officer. So who wants to come in first? And Tony Hughes, I know, is here as well as the AOMB planning officer. So who's going to come in first?
I'll just come in very quickly. Just want to thank the officer involved in this and the SPD group and those who wrote in as residents and other organisations. It's been a great piece of work, and I don't know if I need to. I'm happy to propose if needed and hand over to Tony for a few words also.
Thank you. Yeah, Tony, do you want to come in?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for that. Yeah. As per usual, Tony Hughes done an excellent job on this. Thank the team for that. There's no doubt about it. Just for members, notice Tony Hughes is actually retiring from his position, so I think we wish him well in that, and he's going to be a hard act to follow. So can I formally thank him for all he's done for AOMB and for the Planning Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, let's we'll just make sure that that's minuted as well. Those thanks. Thank you very much. Anyone else want to come in on this? We obviously do need to make a decision. Tony, do you want to come in on? Tony Hughes, do you want to come in on anything?
Thank you, Chair. I must admit,
Tony, I think
the rest anyway, but never mind. Everybody knows now. But I will be 70 next year, so I think it's time for me to go. But thank you again for the reception that this project has received. I mean, we've had lots of support for it across the board, and the consultation that we carried out earlier this year showed that there was a substantial amount of support for it. We have made a few changes, which we've seen to be able to approve the changes and adopt the document. I should mention about Flintshire and Wrexham as well. As you know, this is a cross-border initiative affecting the whole of the AOMB, so both Flintshire and Wrexham have to approve it as well. Wrexham will be considering it next month, but I've heard this morning that Flintshire unfortunately can't put it on the cabinet for December, so it'll be next year, which is still in turning for our application to the International Dark Skies Association for Dark Sky Community Status. But thanks again anyway.
Very much. Cynghorydd Maida Clyde Davis, you can come in now.
Diolch yn fawr, Mr Cadeirydd, hynod o garedig. Wel, ga i ddymuno dda i Tony. Dwi'n nabod o ers blynyddoedd. RHYL ymddeoliad. Da iawn chi, Tony. Yr unig beth oeddwn ni'n methu ga hyd i yn union lle mae'r newidiadau. Ydych chi wedi rhestru nhw neu ydych chi wedi cuddiad nhw yn ganol yr ddogfen? Diolch yn fawr.
Apologies, Chair and Mirig. I'm afraid I haven't got the translation facility on my laptop at home.
That's all right. I can. Well,
Don't worry. I'll change to the foreign language. As you know, I congratulate you on your second
retirement. Yeah.
Retirement, and wish you very well. He's not old. So I wish you well. I couldn't find the amendment, the only problem. I don't know if you have listed them or are they mixed in with everything else?
Yes, Chair, the amendments are actually set out in the summary of representations on the consultation. There's also a further amendment which we made as a result of the discussion at strategic planning group last month, which is actually in the report, the main report itself. And those have all been incorporated into the document.
Thank you. Yeah, we can see those pages, like what page 192, for example, it says amend para 5.10 to refer to Bug Life, the Invertebrate Conservation Trust, and so on. And sometimes it said no changes proposed and things like that on the comments. So there we go. Do we have a proposer for these? I don't think we had one initially.
Yeah, I propose. Yeah.
We have a seconder for that, Councillor Elliott. I can see that. Okay, we can do this via the disdaining voices vote. So unless anyone says that they do not agree with them, then we can agree. If I just read out the recommendations, the Planning Committee agree the proposed changes to the SBG and formally adopt planning for dark night skies, supplementary planning guidance for lighting in the Clwydian range and devalue AOMP. And that's been proposed and seconded. So unless there's anyone that disagrees with that, then that will go through. So I'll just give you a few seconds now to unmute and speak if you disagree with accepting that. Okay, so therefore that has been agreed. And that's that. So that's the end of committee. Oh yes, sorry, there is one thing. Oh, yeah.
There's an extra one. Oh, another one.
No, it's not another one. It is just on the very last bit of the last sheet, on the blue sheet, it says, if we just look, very last page, last little bit, it's just an information. Okay, we're not having a discussion about it. Members will recall, if I just read out a little bit of it, officers' notes, members will recall that at the June Planning Committee, it was resolved to grant planning permission for the proposal on the 102 affordable dwellings on Alexandra Drive, Prestatyn. Following that resolution, the Welsh Government put a holding direction in place. They have now informed us that they are not going to call in the planning application. So therefore, the planning authority, Denbighshire, can now continue to process the application with a view to issuing the planning decision once the Section 106 legal agreement has been signed. So there we go. So that's not been called in, so we don't need to do anything. That's obviously, we've made a decision on that, but that's just for information for members. Okay, many thanks and see you next time. Bye.
Thank you very much. See ya.